Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your boy Dre coming to you live, and I need you to sit down and really focus because we are about to dive deep into something that just happened at Bengals training camp that has the entire Cincinnati organization in a state of shock. We are talking about day one, literally day one, of the 2026 Cincinnati Bengals training camp. And the injury gods have already shown up to the party, ready to wreak absolute havoc on what was supposed to be a redemption story for one of the most talented young defensive linemen in the entire league. I'm talking about Shamar Stewart going down with a knee injury that looked absolutely brutal in the footage, and I'm not even exaggerating when I say this could be a franchise-altering moment for Cincinnati. Because this isn't just about one player missing a few games. This is about the entire defensive infrastructure of a team that desperately needs to finally get their act together on that side of the ball. The Bengals have the most explosive, talented offense in football, no argument, but their defense has been the Achilles heel, holding them back from being a real Super Bowl contender. And now, before we even get real football going, they're already dealing with a setback that could derail the entire defensive reset they've been building toward. So stick with me, because I'm about to break down everything you need to know about what happened, why it matters, and what comes next. Let me set the scene for you, because you need to understand the context of how fast this went sideways. The Cincinnati Bengals opened up training camp 2026 with genuine optimism, and I'm not being hyperbolic. The organization had spent the entire offseason working on defensive improvements. The coaching staff had put together a game plan that was supposed to highlight some young, athletic pieces trying to prove themselves. And when you're running 11 on 11s, that's the real competitive drill where offense and defense go full speed against each other with no restrictions. That's when the actual work starts. That's when you see if what you've been building in individual drills and positional work actually translates to competitive football. So the Bengals are running these 11s, and we're talking minutes into the actual live action work. The first few reps are happening, and boom, Shamar Stewart, your 2025 first-round pick, your guy who is supposed to be a cornerstone of the defensive line rotation, his leg bends in a way that immediately tells everyone watching that something is very, very wrong. According to The Athletic's Paul Danner Jr., who was right there at Paul Brown Stadium covering the camp in real time, what we're looking at is a hyperextended knee. And when I say the footage is gruesome, I mean it in the most literal sense. The video started circulating on social media almost immediately, and it went viral for all the wrong reasons. You can see Stewart's leg buckle, you can see the unnatural angle that his knee achieved, and then you can see the immediate reaction from Stewart himself. He knows something is wrong the second it happens. This isn't a guy who got rolled up on or who took a hit to the leg. This is a guy whose knee just gave way in a way that suggested structural trauma. He's trying to get up, he's trying to shake it off, he's trying to put weight on it, and you can see him literally limping, favoring that leg, unable to put full pressure on it. And then, within moments, the cart is rolling out onto the field. When they're bringing the cart out on the first day of training camp, you know the news is about to be bad. Now here's the thing that makes this even more frustrating and concerning. This is not Shamar Stewart's first rodeo with knee injuries. The man dealt with knee issues during his rookie season in 2025, which was already an absolute disappointment for a first-round pick selected by Cincinnati. And I want to be clear about something because this matters for context. Last season was rough for Stewart. He came into camp dealing with contract negotiations. There were holdout discussions. The extension talks were ongoing. There was noise around whether or not he was going to participate in everything the team wanted him to participate in. And then, when all that got sorted out, he got injured anyway. So he's playing from behind the eight ball from day one of his rookie season. He's trying to make up for lost time. He's trying to prove that he belongs as a first-round pick in this league. And the entire season, his numbers just don't pop. He's missing games because of injury. He's getting limited snaps when he is playing. He's not making the kind of impact that you expect from a guy taken that high in the draft. The Bengals defense needed him. And I'm not talking about needed him in some abstract way. I'm talking about the Cincinnati defense is literally built in a way where if Shamar Stewart is playing well and healthy, the whole unit functions better. And that's exactly why Stewart was vocal, extremely vocal, about wanting a fresh start in 2026. He wanted to come into this year and just erase all the noise from last season. He didn't want another situation where he's dealing with contract stuff, then injury, then playing from behind the curve. He wanted to show up, get healthy, stay healthy, and just dominate people on the field the way he was supposed to when he was drafted. That was the narrative coming into training camp. That was the story everybody was telling themselves. Shamar Stewart is getting healthy. Shamar Stewart is ready to prove he's a legitimate first-round talent. The Bengals defense is finally going to get a boost. And now, on literally the first competitive day, that entire plan is in ruins. But wait, because that's just the beginning of the chaos that went down on day one. Because right after Stewart got carted off, the energy at training camp shifted into something completely different. Suddenly, guys started going at each other. We're talking physical confrontations. We're talking training camp fights, or dust-ups, or scuffles, or whatever you want to call them. Jamar Chase, your all-pro wide receiver, gets into it with DJ Turner. Then it escalates. Other guys get involved. And then, in what might be the most dramatic moment of the entire sequence, Jamar Chase literally throws DJ Turner's helmet across the field. Now, I gotta pump the brakes here for a second, because we all remember what happened a few years back with Myles Garrett and that whole helmet situation. That became a league incident. That got people suspended. Throwing helmets around is not the move, and I'm sure the Bengals coaching staff is going to have some words with their players about weapon safety and discipline. But at the same time, if we're being real with each other, there's something kind of electric about seeing that kind of fire and intensity bubbling up in a training camp. Jalen Davis, your nickel corner, he's the one who really stood out during these confrontations. And here's what's interesting about Davis. He's fighting for his job. There's legitimate competition for the slot nickel corner position. You've got Dax Hill, who could potentially move around. You've got Gio Taylor potentially in the mix. You've got Takario Davis potentially challenging for reps. This is not a settled position where Jalen Davis is just going to walk out there and be the guy every single snap. He's got to earn it. He's got to beat out the competition. And based on what we saw on day one, this guy is absolutely not intimidated by that challenge. He's getting at it with Chase. He's getting physical with Mike Gesicki, and according to Gabby Santino's reporting on the ground, Davis was literally jumping on Gesicki's back after plays, and that's the kind of aggressive physical play that tells you a guy is hungry and competitive. This is a player who's basically saying, "This is my position, don't test me, I'm not backing down from anybody out here." And when Davis talks to the media after practice, his quote is telling. He says, "I hope there's a fight every day." That's not the kind of thing a guy says unless he's legitimately excited about the competition and the physicality of what he's doing out there. Now the question becomes, is this fighting and physicality a good thing or a bad thing? That's actually more nuanced than you might think. Coaches, generally speaking, hate training camp fights. They'll tell you that they can't control themselves, they're being stupid, they're risking injury for nothing, they're delaying practice, and it's just a distraction from the actual work of building a team. And there's legitimacy to that perspective. You don't want your players getting hurt in unnecessary contact. You don't want ejections or suspensions because of training camp incidents. You don't want the energy of practice derailed by drama between teammates. Joe Burrow, your franchise quarterback, actually addressed this after practice, and he was pretty clear that this kind of stuff can't affect the flow of practice. Practice needs to keep moving. They need to be productive with their time. But here's the thing, Burrow also didn't completely shut it down. He acknowledged that there's a certain level of fire and competition that's actually healthy for a team. Because when your defense is getting chippy and aggressive and competitive, that's a sign that guys care about what they're doing. It's a sign that they're not just sleepwalking through training camp, they're actually fighting for position, fighting for relevance, fighting to prove something. And that's the context you need to understand about the Cincinnati Bengals defense. For years now, this unit has been a problem. Not a small problem, a big problem. The Bengals have been one of the most talented offensive teams in football. Joe Burrow is an absolute sniper. Jamar Chase is an unstoppable force. The running back room is solid. The offensive line is respectable. And despite all of that talent on one side of the ball, the team hasn't been able to make deep playoff runs because the defense just hasn't held up their end of the bargain. In playoff games, the Bengals have gotten exposed on defense. In close games, the defense has collapsed when it mattered most. That's not on the offense. That's a defense problem. So when you see defensive guys come out swinging, literally and figuratively, on day one of training camp, there's an argument to be made that this is actually a positive sign. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, this defensive group is starting to develop some swagger, some confidence, some belief that they can actually be good at this. Jalen Davis in particular is a guy I'm going to have my eye on all throughout training camp because what he showed on day one is the kind of mentality that winning teams need from their defensive backs. This is a guy who's competing at a high level, who's not backing down from anybody, who's making his presence felt on every single rep. That's the kind of thing that can turn an okay defensive group into a respectable one. Because defense, more than any other position group in football, is about attitude and effort and swag. You can have tremendous athletes on defense, but if they don't have that competitive fire, if they're not willing to get physical and fight for every single yard, then they're not going to be good. But if you've got players who are hungry and competitive and willing to fight for position, that can elevate an entire unit. But here's the thing that actually made me genuinely smile on day one, and this is something that shouldn't be overlooked because it's actually huge for team chemistry and organizational stability. The Cincinnati Bengals had 0 holdouts to start training camp. I mean 0. Not a single player who was rumored to potentially hold out actually held out. And that's a massive W for the organization, because let me explain why this matters so much. You've got multiple guys on this roster who could theoretically have held out and demanded money. Chase Brown in the backfield is probably thinking about extensions. DJ Turner at receiver seems to be the deepest in extension talks based on all the reporting. Dax Hill in the secondary could be looking for more money. Dalton Risner on the offensive line is on a 1-year deal, so he's definitely motivated to prove himself and cash in. Miles Murphy on the defense could be looking for security. These are all guys who could have potentially created drama and distraction by sitting out or doing a hold in situation where they show up to camp but don't actually participate. We see this happen around the league all the time. Grant Delpit in Cleveland literally did a hold-in situation a few years ago where he went to camp, complained about his back being sore, didn't practice, and then magically got healthy once he got the extension he wanted. That's the kind of distraction that can absolutely derail a team's off-season. It creates tension. It takes focus away from football. It puts coaches in awkward positions where they have to manage business stuff instead of just coaching. The Bengals managed to avoid that entire minefield on day one. Every single one of those guys showed up, participated, and just went to work. DJ Turner, even though he's clearly dealing with extension negotiations, he showed up and got into it with Jamar Chase on the field. That's the kind of energy you want from your players. He's not sitting out. He's not complaining. He's just out there competing. Dalton Risner is out there battling Dexter Lawrence on every single rep, trying to prove that he's worth paying. That's veteran mentality. That's professional. That's the kind of stuff that builds good team chemistry. So when you're looking at the Bengals day one, yes, the Shamar Stewart injury is a major negative that we absolutely have to monitor and take seriously, but the fact that the team avoided the holdout distraction is a significant positive that suggests some organizational competence in how they've handled the business side of things. These guys felt comfortable enough with how things are being handled that they just came to work and played football instead of getting into negotiation warfare during the most important part of the offseason. Now, I'm not going to lie, there's an almost dark comedy to what happened on day one that I gotta mention because it's too perfect to ignore. The very first real competitive play of 11 on 11s, Shamar Stewart hyperextends his knee and gets carted off. The second play, and I'm talking like 2 plays later, Joe Burrow connects with Jamar Chase for what looks like a touchdown. It's this perfect microcosm of the entire Cincinnati Bengals reality over the last several years. The offense just keeps cooking. They keep doing what they do. They keep winning matchups and moving the ball and scoring points regardless of what's happening around them. The defense? The defense is the ugly stepchild that nobody wants to talk about at the Bengals family dinner. They're dealing with injuries. They're struggling to get healthy. They're trying to fight their way into relevance. And meanwhile, the offense is out here just doing offense things like it's nothing. Burrow's arm is still a cannon. Chase is still unstoppable. And when these two connect, it's poetry in motion. But that contrast on day one really highlighted the actual problem with this franchise in a way that was almost too on the nose. Because here's the real talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. Talent on offense is not that rare in the NFL. You can draft offensive skill positions, and they tend to develop pretty quickly. Bad throws become good throws over time. Routes get more crisp. Confidence builds. Defensive dominance? That's the hard thing to build. That's the thing that actually wins you playoff games and gets you to Super Bowls. The Bengals have been trying to upgrade that defense for years now, and Shamar Stewart was supposed to be a cornerstone of that improvement project. He was supposed to be the young, athletic edge rusher who could get after the quarterback and disrupt passing lanes, and now we're watching that plan get derailed before it even really got rolling. Let me break down the timeline of what this means for the Bengals season. A hyperextended knee, in the best-case scenario, is actually not the worst injury you can have. A hyperextension suggests that the joint got bent too far in one direction, but the major ligaments might still be intact. The structural integrity of the knee might be okay. But there's definitely trauma, definitely swelling, definitely pain involved. Best-case scenario, we're talking a few weeks of recovery. The guy gets some rest, some treatment, some rehab, and he's back to work in a reasonable time frame. Worst case scenario, if there's any structural damage underneath that hyperextension, if there are tears, if there's ligament damage that didn't get immediately apparent, then we could be talking about something that costs him multiple weeks or even extends into the regular season. For a guy who's already behind from a development standpoint because of what happened last year, missing significant time is absolutely the last thing he needs. The Bengals are going to need to monitor this situation very closely over the next few days. There will be imaging done. There will be MRIs taken. There will be medical evaluations from the team doctors and potentially outside specialists. And as soon as we get any official word on the timeline, we're going to know whether this is a situation where Stewart misses a couple weeks or a situation where this becomes a bigger problem. But either way, the fact that he's already dealing with a knee injury on day one of training camp is going to affect how the Bengals approach the rest of the offseason. Now, here's where I want to pivot this conversation because I'm genuinely interested in what Jalen Davis represents for the future of this defense. This is a player who came into training camp understanding that his position isn't a lock, that there's competition, that he's got to earn his reps every single day. And instead of being intimidated by that, Davis came out absolutely swinging. He's not trying to just hold on to his job. He's trying to dominate everybody around him and prove that this is his position and nobody's taking it from him. That's the kind of mentality that actually builds great defense. That's the kind of energy that can change a locker room's approach to the game. And I'm not going to sit here and act like training camp fights are unique or anything special. This happens at every team's training camp. Guys get heated. Testosterone is flying. Everybody's fighting for jobs and money and recognition and respect. It's a pressure cooker environment. But what's interesting about the Cincinnati situation specifically is that the aggression seems to be coming from a place of genuine competition rather than frustration or bad vibes. These guys aren't fighting because they hate each other. They're fighting because they want to be the best at their position. They want to prove something. And that energy can actually be a net positive if the coaching staff channels it correctly and doesn't let it turn into something that's actually destructive. So here's my take on day one of Bengals training camp. It's been a mixed bag, but the negatives are more significant than the positives. The Shamar Stewart injury is a big problem that's going to have ripple effects throughout the entire defensive scheme and the game plan that the coaching staff has been putting together. It affects how they allocate resources. It affects how they practice. It affects how they game plan for the preseason and eventually the regular season. When you lose a first-round pick to injury before training camp even really gets going, that's a domino situation where one injury can throw off the whole trajectory of an offseason. But at the same time, there are some genuine green shoots of positive things happening underneath all the chaos. The organization handled the holdout situation perfectly, which speaks to some level of competence in the front office. The competitive intensity on the defensive side is real, even if it manifested in some fights that the coaching staff probably didn't love. And we still haven't even gotten to the meaningful portion of the training camp where you really start to see how this team is going to look when everything clicks into place. The bigger picture story here is whether the Cincinnati Bengals can finally build a defense that matches the elite level of their offense. Because here's the hard truth. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are probably not going to get better than they already are. They're already operating at elite levels. They're already doing things that very few players in NFL history have done. The way you win in this league with elite offense is by getting your defense to a respectable level where they can hold up their end of the bargain in close games and playoff situations. You need your defense to keep games close. You need your defense to get stops when it matters. You need your defense to create turnovers and momentum shifts. And if Shamar Stewart can't stay healthy and productive, if the defensive line can't get its act together, if the secondary can't stay intact, then we're going to be watching another season where the Bengals offense carries them as far as they can go before the playoff teams with elite defenses knock them out. That's the reality of football. You can have the best offense in the world, but if your defense doesn't step up, you're not winning championships. The social media reaction to the Shamar Stewart injury has been brutal, by the way. When someone called me a liar for breaking the news initially, you know you're dealing with something that people are struggling to accept. Some people putting different reactions. Tough to hear, man. Devastating, disappointing. These are the kinds of reactions you get when a franchise's plans get derailed before they even really get going. The fan base was invested in the idea of Shamar Stewart having a redemption arc. They wanted to see him prove that he was worth that first-round pick. And now they're sitting with the reality that he's already dealing with an injury that could set him back again. That's hard for fans to swallow. As we move forward with training camp, we're going to have to monitor multiple things. Number one, obviously, is the Shamar Stewart injury timeline. As soon as there's official word on what the damage is and how long he's going to be out, that's going to tell us a lot about whether the Bengals can adjust on the fly or whether this becomes a bigger problem. Number two is how the team responds to losing a key defensive piece. Do they go shopping for reinforcements? Do they shuffle the rotation? Do they move guys around to try to fill the gap? Number three is whether Jalen Davis can maintain that competitive energy and turn it into actual on-field production. The fight is one thing. Can he actually cover receivers? Can he make tackles? Can he be a difference maker? Those are the questions that determine whether his training camp intensity becomes a success story or just something that gets forgotten by October. There you have it, the complete breakdown of day one at Bengals training camp. If you're not already locked in with the show, this is exactly why you need to be. We're going to have updates on Shamar Stewart's injury as soon as they come out. We're going to break down every practice update, every competitive battle, every storyline that develops throughout training camp. Because this is the time of year where the real organizational identity gets revealed before we ever put on a game that counts. Drop a like on this one if you appreciate the real talk about what's happening in Cincinnati. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking. Do you think the training camp fights are good competition or bad distraction? Are you concerned about Shamar Stewart's injury and what it means for this defense? Are you optimistic that the Bengals can finally build a complete team? Let me know in the comments. I'm reading every single one. Subscribe to Dre Talk Sports right now for all your no-filter, completely unfiltered breakdowns of football, basketball, and everything in between. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video when we go live with breaking news or deep dives into the biggest stories in sports. Because the next update on Stewart's condition or the next training camp development could drop at any moment, and you're not going to want to miss it. We're going to be covering this situation from every angle, bringing you expert analysis, insider reports, and real talk about what it all means for the Cincinnati Bengals championship hopes in 2026. Stay locked in with Dre Talk Sports, where we keep it real, we keep it honest, we keep it spicy, and we never hold back on what we actually think about these stories. Because that's what separates real sports commentary from the corporate, sanitized takes you get everywhere else. We're talking to you like you're part of the squad. We're bringing you the inside information. We're breaking down what actually matters. That's what we do here. So smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and let's keep building this community of real sports fans who actually care about understanding what's going on in this league. The 2026 NFL season is about to be absolutely crazy, and you don't want to miss a single moment of it. Let's go. Peace.